Happy New Year. You seem a little surprised. No, but it is Happy New Year, and I think it's quite appropriate that I'm here once again in Addis on the occasion of the celebration of the New Year. As we all know, New Year's are a time where we focus on renewal, we focus on new and fresh beginnings, we focus on trying to have good relations with our neighbors, we focus on peace, and we focus on wanting greater prosperity for our families, for our communities, for our countries. I've spent the last few days, as you've probably seen, as I do in all my trips to Ethiopia, focused on the importance, as Ambassador Masinga outlined in his May 15th speech, of advancing dialogue to bring an end to the fighting that we see throughout Ethiopia, whether it's in Amhara, in Oromia, and of course, fortunately, to continue the efforts to ensure that the guns remain silent in Tigray. And so on the latter, on Tigray, of course, we have the implementation of the Cessation of Hostilities Agreement that's now approaching 2 years. As you remember, it was signed in November 2022. And so I had an opportunity to meet with the African Union, which of course has the lead in terms of ensuring its implementation, and had an opportunity to meet with Tigrayan officials, as well as we'll meet with Ethiopian government officials, to ensure that all elements of it are fully implemented. A strong focus on ensuring that all those that have been displaced by the war are able to return to their homes securely. Of course, of ensuring a program on DDR, demobilization, disarmament, and reintegration occurs, and resolution of outstanding issues through political dialogue. The United States is committed to supporting Ethiopia's sovereignty, territorial integrity, and unity. That is the core of our partnership with Ethiopia. We want to support the Ethiopian people. We are committed to having good relations amongst our people, and I'm very proud, of course, of the contributions that American taxpayers make to help alleviate the suffering and being the largest bilateral contributor of humanitarian assistance, as you all well know. And I'm very proud to partner with Ambassador Masinga, who I've known for quite some time, and the Embassy Addis team, as they work, again, on all these issues on a daily basis. So with that, let me just stop and, of course, entertain your questions. Let me also say, as Marshawn has already referenced, we, the United States, value journalists and reporters, the work you do, the courage you have, operating oftentimes in very difficult environments. Freedom of the press is one of our core principles. And so, again, I want to thank you. That doesn't mean you can't be tough with me today. Please ask whatever question you'd like. And, of course, we'll do the best that we can to answer them.
Millions of IDPs in Tigray and the occupation of their hometowns, including part of Eastern Tigray by Eritrean forces, and as well as Western Tigray remains under the occupation of Amhara administration, despite the signing of the peace deal almost 2 years ago.
Yeah. We have been supporting their plight, but we want them to be able, of course, as agreed upon in the Pretoria Agreement, to be able to return to their homes in a secure environment. It is something we stress at every meeting. I believe, and I've seen reports, that there have been now the beginnings of some returns of IDPs, particularly towards the south, but that's not enough. We as Americans have a DNA that means that we're quite impatient, so we want to see results, but I'm sure the Ethiopian people are impatient. And so as part of my visits, we continue to push forward both the federal government and the interim regional administration of Tigray to, again, work together to ensure, again, in the case of the IDPs, that they can return home. That's good for all of Ethiopia. And so I hope that we continue to make progress. We're not satisfied with the amount of progress, but some progress has been made. And we can't lose sight of the fact that the silencing of the guns was critically important, and we must remain committed to a lasting peace. And in my meetings, of course, with any and all Tigrayan officials, as well as with the government, I have heard continued commitment, again, to full implementation of the Pretoria Agreement. As it relates to concerns about lingering Eritrean troop presence in Ethiopia, from what we hear from the AU verification monitoring team, that is still a concern. And again, we hope that, as was provided for in the Pretoria Agreement, that all non-ENDF forces withdraw fully from Tigray. Thank you.
Okay, my question is that the first thing, how do you evaluate Ethiopia's commitments regarding the implementation of this Pretoria Accord? Is there any plan from the US to incorporate Ethiopia in AGOA because of the efforts from Ethiopia? And is there any plan of adding Ethiopia in upcoming year?
Thank you for your question. If we look over the scope of the last 2 years, when we were in Pretoria 2 years ago nearly, many of my colleagues reminded me that cessation of hostilities agreements don't tend to last. But this one has. It has endured. And let's not lose sight of that. There's now peace in Tigray, and that's good for all of Ethiopia. And so while we are impatient and perhaps dissatisfied, and rightfully so, that all elements of it haven't yet been implemented, what I continuously hear from the government, from Tigrayan officials, is a full commitment to make sure that the peace endures. And the United States is prepared to do its part to ensure that that happens, together with the African Union, IGAD, which was also there as an observer, and the United Nations, which was there also in Pretoria. So we keep working at it, and that's why I keep coming. But of course, that's also the daily work of Ambassador Masing and his team. You know, he was in Mekele recently, and so we will continue to work on that. But as we work on that, let's not lose sight of the fact the United States also cares about the unfortunate circumstances of considerable violence in Amhara and still violence in Oromia. And so to your question of AGOA, we would like nothing more than Ethiopia to return and be reinstated into AGOA. But in accordance with our law, there is a requirement that there not be any violations of human rights by government forces. And then sadly, as many of you have reported, there are still abuses and atrocities being committed. And therefore, as long as that continues, it won't be possible for Ethiopia to be reintegrated, reinserted into AGOA. But we would like nothing better. So just because we were able to achieve peace in Tigray, the work is not done. And that's why the United States continues to offer its good offices for dialogue with Amhara Fano, if that is possible. And as you know, I participated in talks with the OLA and the government in Dar es Salaam in November of last year. And we remain open to pursuing further talks, whether it's on the Oromia track or if it's at all possible in the case of Amhara. These conflicts do not have military solutions. These difficult historical issues need to be resolved through dialogue. And I know that there's a national dialogue process, which we hope will take effect and gain momentum, and we support those efforts. And there also must be a full accounting of what has happened, and we support, again, the government's efforts on transitional justice. So we are deeply engaged in partnership with the government and, of course, with any of those who are interested in pursuing peace for all Ethiopians. Of course, I go to Tigray and Ambassador Masinga, we go because we want to ensure that the cessation hostilities agreement endures, and that's very important to maintaining the peace in Tigray. It's difficult, quite frankly, for us to travel to Amhara and Oromia precisely because of the continued fighting. Nonetheless, I know that Ambassador Masinga and his embassy Addis team are always looking for opportunities in cooperation with the government of Ethiopia to see how dialogue or negotiations might be able to take place to bring an end to these conflicts. And so it may not be visible to you every day. And frankly, a lot of efforts to promote peace need to be done quietly and behind the cameras. But we are working on it, I can assure you, each and every day. Likewise, in the case of Oromia, you have seen that we did conduct some talks in Tanzania. We were hopeful that that would produce a good outcome in silencing the guns in Oromia. But just because that didn't succeed doesn't mean we have stopped our efforts. And in fact, together with Norway, we remain fully committed to supporting any efforts to also advance an end to the violence in Oromia. And it's something I discuss with the Prime Minister each and every time I come. And we talk about how, again, the United States can support his efforts to achieve peace through dialogue. And you can rest assured the United States will remain committed. So even if it's not as visible, and again, I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it today, you can be certain that it is a focus of our work. And as you heard very clearly from Ambassador Masinga's May 15th speech, that is our policy. And whenever you hear American policymakers, whether here or in Washington, you will hear the same refrain. We want to see peace for all Ethiopians. Well, I haven't personally. Again, I leave some of the follow-up work to the embassy. And perhaps, again, the question here is, who are the right people to meet? Who are those that are most interested in pursuing peace? And again, I appreciate your efforts to try to learn every detail, but not every detail comes out right away. But in due time, I'm sure everything will become public. Thank you.
During visit to Tigray, and the TPLF recently revealed that talks have taken place between them and Eritrea's leaders outside the country 6 months ago. I was wondering if you could also comment on this. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, certainly in my meetings with Tigrayan authorities and TPLF, I urge them to continue to have complete support for full implementation of the Pretoria Agreement, which they assured me. I met with President Getachew Reda of the Interim Regional Administration. I met with the Vice President, as you know, General Sadkan, and this morning I met with Dr. Debretsion, head of the TPLF. All of them unequivocally said they are committed to peace, and they're committed to full implementation of the Cessation Hostilities Agreement. That's what the United States cares about. And so whatever internal divisions there may be in politics, not everybody's in agreement. Whatever the divisions may be, we urge that they be resolved through dialogue. Eventually, I imagine there'll be regional elections in Tigray, as there will be in other regions. You have a national election coming. People will pick their leaders, and that's the way to resolve things, through democratic means. So we're not getting ourselves involved in intra-party squabbles or in intra-regional political dimensions, but rather we send the same message, is make sure that what you're doing looks to advance the basic principles that were agreed to in Pretoria in the case of Tigray. As far as the reports that we've seen about potential conversations between Tigrayan officials and Eritrea, let's just be clear. What we want to see is no return to war between Ethiopia and Eritrea, no incursions into Ethiopian territory or Eritrean territory by either side. And we want to, if we can, even help implement fully the Algiers Agreement of 2000, which delineated the border, to make sure there isn't any confusion or misunderstanding between the two countries. So if there is dialogue between them, again, that's an issue that, for others to look into. But the point being here is that it should be focused on ensuring an end to any human rights abuses being committed by any forces. It should be intended to improve the relationships between the two countries and to help really this region, which is suffering from so much conflict, whether it's in Sudan or, of course, you've got Al-Shabaab in Somalia. These are issues that we discuss as the United States, again, with the African Union during my visits here. I met this morning with the Executive Secretary of IGAD, Dr. Workney. again, we talk about all these issues about how the United States can be a partner for peace. So again, that's as far as I will say. I don't know the specifics, obviously, of the conversations, and you should ask them about it. Thanks.
Thank you, Ambassador. Are you concerned by the current deteriorations of the relations between Ethiopia and Somalia? Because you talked about ensuring Ethiopia's sovereignty, but Somalia considers that his sovereignty has been violated by the MOU. And are you also concerned by the involvement now currently of Egypt?
Yeah. No, thank you, Dylan, for those questions. Let me state unequivocally, the United States supports Somalia's territorial sovereignty, integrity, and unity, and we've made that very clear. We want to see peaceful and good relations between all countries in the region, and certainly between Ethiopia and Somalia. And we urge both to find ways to move forward and look how they can continue to work together. We are well aware of the ENDF's and Ethiopia's sacrifice in Somalia in the fight against al-Shabaab. That's what we should be focusing on, frankly, from a U.S. perspective. How can we support Somalia in its fight against al-Shabaab? And that's really what we are concerned about. And that, of course, requires that there be a good relationship between the two countries. And when we talk to the leaders in the region, we ask that hopefully they can find ways, again, to increase cooperation. There's no reason that these two countries should have difficulties that can't be resolved, again, through conversations. But again, both countries need to accept the basic principles outlined, frankly, by the AU Charter, and it's, which is a affirmation and recognition and understanding of each other's territorial sovereignty, integrity, and unity. You mentioned Egypt. We have obviously conversations with all countries in the region. We've been discussing with Egypt quite a bit its concerns on Sudan. When I meet later with Foreign Minister Taye, we will also be talking about Sudan as well as other issues. And so again, the key here is for what we hope the governments in the region to find ways to cooperate to end the devastating war in Sudan, to develop regional economic integration and vehicles to push forward the type of prosperity they want to see for their peoples. And that's the message that we send. And so, of course, there are historical tensions. Each country has rich histories, but that doesn't mean that in standing up for your rich histories and sovereignty, that it needs to come into conflict with some other countries. So rest assured that we talk to all capitals. My colleague Tom Perriello was just recently in Cairo, and we expect, again, to continue to have conversations that hope to reduce tensions and focus on the task at hand, which is to promote peace, security, and stability, and to try to achieve prosperity for all the peoples of the Horn.
My question is, what is the assessment of the US regarding the Schengen process? And also, what is the assessment of the US regarding the transitional justice process, which is being slowed a little bit? And most importantly, as the Tigray war viewed gender-based violence perpetuated with the high gender-based violence, that has become set a tone for gender violence to grow up across Ethiopia domestically, and that has set a bad precedent for accountability of gender-based violence. So what's the assessment of those two?
Yeah, no, thank you very much for your question. I wish a male reporter had asked about gender-based violence, because we all should be concerned, whether you're male or female. It's horrific what has happened in Ethiopia. It's horrifying what's happening in Sudan. I will relate to you that we were recently in Geneva, in Switzerland, pushing for peace in Sudan and protection of human rights through our new Alps initiative. And we met with Sudanese women, and we heard their cries for help, and we heard about the horrific things happening in Sudan. And we've also met with Ethiopian women who have suffered likewise. It is imperative that it be understood that it is unacceptable. It cannot happen to have the brutality of what we've seen in terms of gender-based violence, and it is a priority for the United States. We even have a special envoy for global women's issues, Ambassador Gupta, and we put a high priority on this, and you can rest assured in our meetings, we always raise it. And I wish, in fact, in many of the meetings that I go to, even in these negotiations, that there were more women at the table. Because I think if there were more women at the table, we'd have even better prospects for peace, undoubtedly. As far as the national dialogue, as I mentioned, we are supportive of a national dialogue that is inclusive and credible. But whether it's inclusive enough or credible enough, that's for the Ethiopian people to decide. But what I hear constantly is that people think that is the best way to overcome, again, some of historical grievances. And so we are prepared to support it. I've heard the Prime Minister say it is a priority for him. So I hope it yields the desired result, but it's really for the Ethiopian people to decide, whether it is making sufficient progress. But we want to, again, stand by that. Secondly, on transitional justice, as Secretary Blinken said when he was here, and I was here with him in March of 2023, it is incredibly important to have accountability for what has happened during the Tigray War. And we recognize, because we're familiar with transitional justice processes in other countries. I was involved in our policy and work on Colombia, for example. It takes time. That doesn't mean you need to be patient, just that we understand that it takes time. And so we appreciate the efforts that the government has been making on transitional justice. And in the end of the day, we'll see whether it holds those perpetrators to account and whether it satisfies the demands of the Ethiopian people for justice. But again, we want to be a partner. We want to share our experiences, what work we've done around the world, and help, again, ensure that there is a transitional justice process that is worthy of the expectations of all those that have suffered. But I very much thank you for your question. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Ethiopians are highly concerned that the conflict between the Tigray forces and the federal government shall be sparked anytime soon. What is your observation? And do you have any comment?
Between Tigrayan forces and yeah. I mean, this is why. Look, I had a meeting with the Commissioner Temesgen yesterday, in which we talked about the urgency of launching the DDR program, because these forces should be completely demobilized. These individuals who are combatants need to go back to their daily lives, and they want to go back to their daily lives. The United States is contributing to a fund that the UNDP is putting together. We know the financing is there for the first tranche, which would demobilize about 75,000 of the Tigrayan combatants. So let's get going. Let's make sure that we deliver results that can ensure a lasting peace in Tigray. There is no reason or explanation that could be given for returning to violence. The tragic suffering that Tigray and Ethiopia faced during the war is unfathomable. It was at the time the worst conflict on earth. But through courage of political leadership in Pretoria, that was brought to an end. That same courage needs to be displayed every day to ensure that you don't go back to conflict or war, and that you do what is necessary to bring peace to Amhara, to Oromia. Because with peace, this country of Ethiopia can thrive and can reach its full economic potential. And so, again, I'm very proud of the work that we have done as the United States, but the work is unfinished. And we are committed, again, to being a good partner to all Ethiopians and to hopefully address these issues through dialogue and to get to the point where we're not talking about war, but we're simply talking about increasing trade. And so, again, I really want to thank all of you for the work that you do, and all Ethiopians for how kind and engaged they've been with me whenever they see me somewhere, whether it's here or in the United States. I appreciate that very much from the bottom of my heart. And we will continue, again, from our side, to do whatever is possible. But it is essential to any country to have full respect for human rights, to have full respect for all freedom of speech, freedom of the press. There are core values and beliefs, and we believe that all people pretty much would like to see that. So again, I wish Ethiopians all the best in this new year, and let's make sure that 2017 is even better than the last year, right? It's year 2017, isn't it? I just want to make sure I got it right. So thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah.